So thanks for that, Alex. That was really good. I am a big fan of Lego. We had tons of it as kids. My grandma used to give us so much Lego for Christmas.
Should give out Lego instead of chocolate next year.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, give out Lego instead of chocolate. I think later we'll try and get the Everything is Awesome song on just to bring everyone up. So as a thank you, you've got either Creation Dessert and Prestige. I think you have Prestige, so maybe if you want Prestige, there you go, you switch it up a bit. Yeah, thank you very much for Brewing Talk, Alex. So next up we have Isabelle from Atlassian. So I always pronounce it wrong. Atlassian. I don't know if you've seen those guys around at career days and stuff, but they've always got really cool t-shirts. So Isabelle's going to be talking about insights into internships and how to get what you want out of internships. So just tips and tricks and stuff like that. So if we can give her a big round of applause, that'd be great.
All right, welcome everyone. As introduced, I'll be talking about insights into internships and basically the 5 things I feel like are the most important to take away with you if ever you have one or if you've done one in the past. Quick intro though about who I am. As she already mentioned, I'm a software developer at Atlassian. I just graduated from UNSW a couple of months ago, so I was a mid-year grad. When I was there, I was a co-op scholar as well, meaning I had a couple full-time internships at different companies. So I worked for Circa, who create financial tools for researchers. I was there for 6 months on an internship, then continued as part-time for another 6 months. And then I had another full-time internship at Atlassian, and ever since then I've stayed on, and I love working there. So who recognizes this? Yeah? All right. A lot of us probably have seen it before. It's the internship. Basically, this is not what we want to go into an internship thinking it's going to be like, because it's not. So just putting it out there from the outset. But what we do hear a lot about is there's lots of different things out there about advice for internships and, you know, the long list of all the things that you should do and the advice that they give. The thing is, a lot of these articles, particularly on the internet, are focused on what happens afterwards, like how to score the job once you're finished, or how to be the most impressive. What I want to take a different look at is that's not the sort of focus that you want to be going in an internship to have. Because think about it, if maybe at the end of a 10-week placement or a 12-week placement and you don't get the job, then how are you going to look back on that experience? You'd think, you know, it's a disappointment you didn't get the job. Instead, what we should go into internships thinking about is how can you make the most of it for yourself and think more long-term. It's simpler than that. It's simpler than those long lists of different things to try and do. Like I read on one of the sites that you should always try and stay back late, like past your boss's hours, so you look like you're really keen. And really, beyond your internship, that's not what you're going to want to be doing anyway, so why do it then? Instead, seize your internship as an opportunity for learning, growth, and self-development. So if you are going into an internship, then what are these things that you can focus on that you can do not only during then, but also beyond? So whether you're a grad or whether you're, you know, taking on perhaps a further job down your career. So I think there are 5 things, 5 key things that I want to go through in this presentation. But first of all, raise your hand if you've ever had a tech-related internship in the past, or if you've got one coming up at the end of this year. Yeah, quite a few people. All right, keep your hand raised if you felt like university was the one who helped you be well prepared for it. All right, not so many hands are left up anymore. Okay, that leads me into the first of the 5 top tips that I have for you today. And this first one, I think, is about ask. Or, as I better like to think of it, always seek knowledge. So, here we have Dave Curran. He's the CIO of Westpac, and he said, so just over a month ago in an interview, he said, "Gone are the days where an IT graduate gets a job as a programmer." And this is really interesting because the jobs of the digital revolution today are things like data scientists or cloud architects or gamification designers or cybersecurity specialists. It's not just about going in and programming and that's it. So particularly with an internship, you should also not expect the same sort of thing, that you're going to be expected to do a whole range of different tasks or in different areas that you might not have even seen before at university. So this was me on my first day of my internship after, I think it was first or second year at uni. And a lot of people also come into their first internship like that. Some people, great, might know a lot more and don't feel this way, but I'd say a lot of people do. And that's totally okay. However, ignorance, contrary to the common expression, ignorance is not bliss, but it's a waste of time. So how do we get past this state of ignorance, or how do we get past just not knowing how to go about things sometimes? Got another famous person here. We've got Mike Curtis, and VP of Engineering at Airbnb. He was asked what recommendation he'd have for interns, and what he said was, shed your ego and open yourself up to learning. And this is really important because internships provide the optimal environment to soak up knowledge, soak up best practices or new approaches from people who have either been in the industry for quite a while or have had different experiences in different areas. Whether they have a broad range of skills or are experts in niche areas, these are the people who we can learn from if we open ourselves up to it. So when I think of learning, I think there are two main ways to go about this. So firstly, we have be open to it. And the important part here is to listen. If people are explaining things at work or during your internship, if there are tech demos or if there are presentations, just listen. As a young person, we're often compared to like sponges. We're just absorbing information. We're eager to learn more all the time. But the other part of learning is to actively seek it. And to do this, it's important to ask questions. But first, just want to make sure you don't want to be making everyone feel like this in your workplace, because that gets annoying. So obviously take this all with a grain of salt. You don't want to be asking questions all the time, and don't be annoying. However, we do want to try, in the right circumstances, to just question things. And why do we want to do this? So the first reason, I think, is because you could get into a problem, or you could come across a problem, and you might be a bit like this. So if you're struggling ever during an internship, do your Googling, check Stack Overflow, read the relevant docs. But if you've tried and you're still not making a lot of progress, do not be afraid to ask for help. So we don't want that. Instead, other people, either in your team or perhaps in the wider organization, can help you out, and often are very willing to if you take that first step to go and ask them the question. Often, it's a lot more efficient than spending hours or even days trying to work out a problem. And I'm not saying trying to work it out for yourself is a bad thing, but just weigh it up and don't be afraid to ask a question. Now, pro tip. This is something that personally I found to be really, really useful, particularly more recently as I've started working more at Atlassian. So when someone is explaining something to you, delve deeper. Now, what do I mean by this? When someone's explaining something, so whether it be like a choice of algorithm or a design decision, ask things like why. Why is this the approach that we're deciding to take? Why is this better than another thing? Or even how? Like, how could we use this same thing in a different context? Or how does this work in other applications? Delving deeper is really important, but also really useful to ask at that particular point in time. First reason is because it's contextual. If the other person is already explaining something, you're asking related questions, you're more likely to remember it than if you just decided to read up about it later on. But secondly, it also demonstrates a more inquisitive nature, which is something that people really value, but also helps the other person who's explaining things to feel more able and more interested and more willing to help you out because they see that you care about whatever they're talking about. So actually, just last week, this was relevant to me. I asked a teammate why they decided to default to use CommonJS over Require.js as a module loading framework in JavaScript. And They pointed me towards a couple of really useful articles about how it relates to ES6, but setting that aside, the point is I learned a lot from that just by asking why they chose to do a certain thing rather than sit back and think, oh, okay, that must be the right thing to do. All right, so second thing, to jump on opportunities. So I think it's really, really important during an internship to jump on every single opportunity to try something new. So great things never came from comfort zones. And this diagram puts it quite well. So you've got your comfort zone, you've got where the magic happens. Chances are, when you start an internship, most of the things are going to be quite new to you anyway. So in fact, it's an ideal opportunity for you to take on new and exciting projects when given the chance. So I want you to go out there and take risks, be flexible, and be open to giving anything a go. Another thing you can do, and another really important attitude to have, is to embrace change. If you come in with a mindset that embracing change provides opportunities, that is where you have the connection between when things are changing. It might be, rather than thinking it's a stressful situation, or rather than thinking that it's a bad thing, think of it as a new chance to try something that could be really valuable. But in a more practical sense, like where are these opportunities coming from? What do I mean by jump on opportunities? So here are a couple of examples. Firstly, new projects. So this could be perhaps an opportunity to work in a different technology or in a different team within your internship that opportunities might come up for. Jump on that if you're keen, because that's a good chance to try it. Another thing is new types of work. So perhaps what you've spent a lot of your time on doing is back-end development. Maybe you want to try some front-end development instead. Perhaps you've been given the opportunity, or perhaps there's a chance to do some design work or some management. Again, dabbling in all these different things is really useful. Another type of opportunities is things like new experiences. What I mean by this is things like going and speaking at conferences, or going and speaking within your company at the team meetings, or perhaps liaising with clients, or onboarding a new starter. These are different experiences that, again, are really valuable to jump on and be keen about and give it a go while you're in your internship. Because only by trying new things do you discover new passions in other fields or technologies. So Richard Branson, a billionaire entrepreneur, he said, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure how to do it, say yes, and then learn how to do it later. I thought this was really insightful. The idea that when you're given an important, like an amazing opportunity, so just go for it. Because if you miss that chance, like what is there to lose, basically? You're in an internship, you're giving everything a go, just give it your best shot. So an anecdote of mine was when I first started my internship at Atlassian, there was a project that came up related to Confluence charts, which was one of the founders, Mike Cannon-Brook's original idea. He started working on it. And I said, yeah, I'll try it, I'll do it. The very next week, I was in the founder's office talking with him about this project. And that was really cool, and he's a really smart guy. But I wouldn't have had that if I had been shying away from these opportunities. But just a reality check, don't overdo it. Don't make things like false promises or exaggerate your abilities, or don't pretend to know everything. When I say jump onto opportunities, I mean give it your best shot, but also be humble about it and recognize that you don't know everything, that you might fail, but you're taking that risk and you're going to do your best anyway. All right, number 3. What we've got. Take ownership. So for taking ownership, I mean take ownership of what you want and what you do. There are 3 main parts to this one. Firstly, to take initiative. And this one might seem fairly obvious. Like, it's never a good thing to sort of just sit back during an internship and kind of wait for things to be put on your desk or tasks for you to do. It's really important to be proactive, because if there's nothing for you to do at a particular time, figure out something of your own, find a new project, ask for something new to do. So one of Atlassian's company values is be the change you seek. And this is something that resonates with me quite personally as well. The idea that if you're not happy with something, just don't complain about it or don't just let it go, but go out there and try and make a difference. So this idea of taking an initiative doesn't matter if you're an intern or if you're a grad or if you're a seasoned developer or a designer or a manager. Be the change you seek and try and make a difference in whatever way you can. Now, the second part of taking ownership is taking ownership of your confidence and of what you know and what you can do. So as you're studying in uni, you might have a major in something. You might, for all you know more about something than perhaps a lot of the people in the teams that you end up working with during your internship. So don't be afraid to question how and why things are done in a particular way. Have the confidence to speak up during meetings and speak out about what you think. Do your best to be a thought leader, because that's what's really valued in a company or in a workplace, and that's what often gains you a lot of respect. If you have your ideas and you're willing to put them out there to everyone else and to try and make a difference to make things better. So we've got Sarah Blakely. She was an entrepreneur and she founded Spanx. She says, "I did not have the most experience in the industry, but I cared the most." And with this, it's important to know that having the confidence and also having the passion about something is what matters to a lot of people as well. If you care about something and if you are confident in believing that things should go a certain way or how things could improve, step out there and actually go for it. The third and final part of taking ownership, I think, is taking ownership of yourself. So focusing on self-improvement. Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, Tesla, co-founder of PayPal, he says as some advice, when he was asked about what advice he'd give to interns and new starters, he said, constantly think about how you can be doing things better. And I think this doesn't just apply to internships or graduate positions, but throughout your life. You need to spend time, and always spend time, thinking about how you can improve yourself, whether it's in your technical skills or your people skills or anything at all. So don't expect things to just be done for you. There's no sitting back and letting things pass by. You have to take ownership of what you do, of your opportunities, of your work, and of yourself. So fourth of the 5 top tips, find a mentor. Now we've already heard from different people already about the idea of mentorship, and that's because it's so important, particularly as an intern, as you are starting out in the industry or in the tech industry or whatever field you're going into. So this is about finding a mentor or a few, because you don't have to just have one. But first of all, what's so good about a mentor? And we have heard great things already, so I'll only briefly go over this one. But the main idea is that we need people around us who can give us advice and who can help us give direction. Whether it is about ourselves technically and about if they can teach us something new, but also more longer term, so it could be our career, where we want to end up in the future. This is the sort of thing mentorship is so valuable for. So Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, he said, "So it's not one mentor, it's a constellation, a network of mentors who really amplify my abilities and knowledge in particular vectors." And this is really well put, right? The idea of having a network of mentors who amplify your abilities and knowledge. Having different people in different areas is so important to you, and that's why I think it's important to not just have one mentor. It's because you might have a mentor who can guide you in the technological fields, who's an expert in progressive technologies, but you might have a mentor on another side who can help you give management techniques or how people skills or how better communication. They're all really important. So what I often get when I talk about mentorship is, where can I get one? And there's lots of options, really. Here's a couple. So firstly, mentors can often come from your teammates. This could be senior developers or your managers. Personally, one of my closest and most important mentors is my team lead. Another thing could be internal mentoring programs, and I think this is particularly more common at larger corporations. So for example, at Atlassian, we have a really strong mentorship program that I find really valuable as well, which is where I have other mentors from. Another one is external networking events. So things like, I think Elizabeth already mentioned the idea of the Girl Geeks Coffees for women. There's also meetups. I highly recommend visiting meetup.com because there are so many different things that you can find about or are interested in. Turning up, making friends, or just even speaking with other people, you can have the opportunity to find a mentor that way. So what do these two have in common? So on the left, of course, we've got Mark Zuckerberg, and on the right, for those who don't know, that's Don Graham. He's the CEO of Washington Post. So these two, back in 2005, when they first met, they actually took it upon themselves to mentor each other, believe it or not. So Don Graham, as the CEO of Washington Post, he needed the advice or guidance on the changing face of social media and media becoming more online and technological based. On the other hand, Mark Zuckerberg was getting mentorship from Don Graham about how to best run a company. So what the important takeaway here is, like, obviously they weren't interns, they were both CEOs, but the principle is the same, the idea that you can have guidance from all different areas, but your own skills can, in their own way, be like a useful part of mentorship for another person, even if you're younger. Mentorship isn't about your seniority or your ranks, but more like what you have to give, how willing you are to give to another person, and being a mentor to others is hugely valuable as well. All right, lucky last thing, and this I think is my favorite and the most important one of all, and this is to love what you do. And I can't really put it any better way. The idea is that you need to find what you're passionate about, discover new interests, keep challenging yourself on a daily basis to make a difference. You need to do what makes you happy, and the quality of your work is guaranteed to be exponentially better. And this is particularly true, I think, when you're first entering the industry at the internship level. So is this the sort of thing that you want? So the first 5 days after the weekend are always the hardest. Or perhaps you're at work and you're just bored, perhaps because it's just not interesting, or perhaps it's just not relevant to you. Or maybe you just can't wait to get out there every time. Clearly, this isn't what you want. But it's also about the subtle things and things that you might not immediately think about when you reflect on, do I enjoy work? Things like, do you believe in what your team and your projects are directed towards? Can you see the value in them, long-term, short-term? Do you see yourself making a difference either now or potentially in the future? Are you seeing that at the end of the day, you're happy with the work that you're doing and with the time that you're spending on it? These subtle things are important to think about during your internship as well. So we've got Steve Jobs from Apple, and he said, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. He brings up two key ideas here that I think are really important. Firstly, the link between doing great work and loving what you do. And it's fairly self-explanatory. If you're passionate about something, of course your work is going to be better, of course you're going to be performing better, and therefore other people are going to also think you're better. But the second part that also is quite important is to keep on looking. If you have an internship somewhere and you realize maybe that's not the kind of thing you want to do, like, that's totally okay, because there are so many other companies out there, and there is guaranteed to be something for you somewhere, whether if it's you joining a large company or perhaps even having your own startup. Maybe that's for you. Either way, find what makes you happy and don't settle for less. Trust me, it's worth it. So in my own experiences, I've had to dabble around in lots of different projects and lots of different types of work because I've always been the type of person who wanted to do everything. So I've been lucky in that I've had a lot of exposure to different things, and in the end I realized that product growth and data-driven development was what I wanted, and it's something I ended up doing at Atlassian. After my internship, I took the initiative, I sought out the team, and I asked, is there a position here, can I join? And I was lucky enough that they said yes, and now I have my grad role there. But the idea is, by having all these range of experiences, that's the only way you're going to find what you actually love to do, and that's how you have to chase after it. So Ursula Burns, she's the chairman and CEO of Xerox, and she actually was an intern there originally, but is currently the CEO. So that's really cool. She says, find something that you love to do and find a place that you really like to do it in. The takeaway here is that the idea of you need to focus on yourself to some degree during your internship in spending that time figuring out, is this what you want to do with your life? Or not even with your life, is this what you want to be spending any of your time doing? It is so much better to figure this out during your internship rather than further down the track when you have, a longer-term contract, or if you have other commitments like a mortgage or a family where you don't have the opportunity to kind of say, maybe this isn't for me, let's just swap over to something else. At this entry point to your career, this is where it's most important to be thinking about yourself. Now, as we started off with about, a lot of the other articles and things written on the internet about advice for internships, where the focus is on how do I get a job? Now, if you're spending your time thinking, am I going to get a job at the end of this? Is everyone appreciating me for what I'm doing? That kind of overlooks the more important thing about figuring out whether it's what you actually love to do. And that is what I think is the biggest focus. So, quick recap on the top 5 tips. Ask, or otherwise, I'd prefer to think of it as always seek knowledge. Jump on opportunities whenever they arise. Take ownership of your opportunities, the work you do, and of your own self-learning. Find a mentor, or a few. And importantly, love what you do. So on a side note, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Atlassian, and for those who don't know what Atlassian does, we create software for project management, team collaboration, and developer tools. And we also happen to have won the Business Review Weekly's Best Place to Work for the past 2 years in a row, which is super cool. But grad roles have just been reopened for next year, so if you're a final year student, or even if you've been out of uni for a couple of years, that's still okay. Come speak to me afterwards, and I can put you in touch with some people and can tell you more about the opportunities there, about my own experiences, and also the summer internships that Atlassian runs as well. And that wraps it up. Thank you.
I have a few minutes of questions if anyone has questions for Isabelle. Yep, one down here.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. Right, so I'll tell you a story first. So at Atlassian, we only originally took interns from the UNSW co-op program, co-op scholarship, which is how I got an internship there. And that's the only place where interns came from. This is the first year that we've opened up, I think, over 20 summer internships. And it's for exactly that reason. We think that if we're going to take an intern, we want to be investing a lot of time and a lot of effort in upskilling them, hopefully so they'll come back as a grad, and hopefully we can have them long term. I think the statistics are around 80%. 80% of interns end up being invited back for a grad role afterwards. So I think it's definitely true that a company would be investing a lot into yourself as an intern. Otherwise, it's a waste for them to really have you there if they're not going to try and do that in the first place, for sure. Any other questions?
I think everyone's all talked out for the day. So that is actually our last talk. Oh, one more.
Yeah. Do you mean to apply for an internship position? Yeah, okay. So that one's tricky because the university can only teach you so much, and a lot of the time it isn't, as I mentioned, hugely useful, hugely practical. So I'd say one important thing is to have side projects. And having side projects is something that interviewers love for you to talk about or to hear about. The other thing is to practice, I guess, and I think that seems fairly obvious, but the more you, particularly with programming, I've always found is the more you do it, the better you become. You kind of can't just do your assignments and like that's it, because you're not going to keep those skills if you don't invest time in practicing. But also, the third, probably most important thing I'd say for you to help prepare yourself for something like an interview is to also invest yourself in your soft skills, which I think Andrew already talked about. Soft skills are hugely valuable because these days it's not just about programming, it's about having a range of skills. So I think those three things are probably the best way to prepare.
I think that pretty much wraps it up, but that was an absolutely fantastic talk, and I really enjoyed hearing about all your adventures over there. So if we can give Isabelle a really big round of applause, that'd be great.